Now, Minister in the Presidency, Mondli Gungubele, tabled the budget vote for the Department of Planning, Monitoring and Evaluation last week. Let's look at the performance of the department now and the year ahead. To expand on that, I'm joined by Minister Gungubele. Minister, very good afternoon to you. Thank you so much for your time. Let's talk about some of the focal areas of your budget vote and perhaps some considerations you had to factor in as you tabled it.
Thanks. Who's speaking now?
It's Mpo.
I'm speaking to?
Mpo.
Thanks, Mpo. My apology. Thanks, Mpo, and your viewership. The biggest challenge we are confronted with in this financial year is to reposition DPME. We had to look back for years and realize that there's a divergent relationship between how government continue over years to expand, putting money into the expenditure, yet growth continues to move in a lower direction. Normally, when government puts money, as our government has been doing over here, that must find an expression in how the economy is performing. And in other words, it means that we had to look back and came to agree that we need to improve the institutionalization of monitoring and evaluation, meaning that it must be an embedded system, not a system that comes in and out and so on, both in terms of its institution, seamlessness with the DPME, and the seamlessness between the departments that also contribute to single projects. The other thing that we're doing is that hugely, what was critical is the digitization of the DPME to move out, to go to paperless approach that makes sure that we can easily monitor departments on daily or an ongoing basis once the plans are concretely in place. And there's also something called Pakisa Labs. It's also a facet or a forum where more than one department will contribute to a particular project. Most of the time, there's a tendency and a struggle to actually monitor the performance of different departments pushing a single project. And what does Pakisa do? Pakisa streamline and ensure that that integration is on site and we're able to see. If we know what contribution each departments make, we check the performance of the project and check when it is not performing. Knowing what each department was supposed to perform, we make sure that that department actually is told to move. So that is the digitization of the DPME and Pakistan Labs. The other area where we're putting money is to actually reposition the presidential hotline, because it is one of the major issues that we need to actually improve witness, because we've actually irritated a lot of people who, because of the poor infrastructure, have not been able to have productive interaction with government. Lastly, one major issue that we deliberately, amongst other things, we intend to do is to make sure that we follow the SONA, which is a traditional thing, but in a more different way. For instance, the president spoke about no less than 21 billion projects being in construction this year. Our system would have said, for instance, no less than 96 billion projects are going to be on the pipeline. Our system must track those. The president spoke about removal of the red tape. Our system must track those. Infrastructure, or to call infrastructure building. And the other issue, we might have reported a week ago, the progress of Vulindlela, all those key structures that undermine the ability of the economic freeway to flow. Your spectrum, your electricity, your energy, security and affordability, your transport, rail line in particular, when it comes to freight and insurance. All those interventions are being integrated, and we're funding the capacity to make an effective integration.
As you make mention of Operation Vulindlela, we know that credit rating agency S&P Global upgraded its outlook for South Africa to positive from stable, which should be speaking to some form of indication that government is putting in place some measures to ensure economic growth. How is government going to continue rebuilding the economy post-COVID-19 and also factoring in the impact of the July unrest?
As I've already said to you, Mpo, there are three critical areas. I like putting them that way. huge improvements to turn around the economy should take place in the economic cluster. Mainly there you speak about structural reform, whose progress report we gave last week. It got no less than 56% positive response to the commercial environment. It's infrastructure-led under Dr. Ramkhupa, of course, representing various departments. And then issue of security, where we ensure that we guarantee some degree of safety to investors. You must have heard that the 30% demand by criminals and all those kind of things. A number of project initiatives that had to leave the country. We want to stop that. We want to make sure that extortions in area like Western Cape, those things come to an end. That's a security cluster. And in the government area, President would have spoken about regulatory costs, the difficulty to start business in South Africa, the difficulty to access loans, the difficulty to get licenses, the difficulties of access roads in local economy. All those are governance issues. Those are major interventions. Yes.
And the part of your speech, Minister, also spoke a great deal about the National Development Plan, you know, and also some efforts of intervention when it comes to monitoring the NDP. And where does this now place the NDP when it comes to the vision?
I'm being interrupted by somebody. I can't hear you properly. Somebody is talking about handsets.
Okay, I do apologize for that, Minister. Let's try again. You spoke a great deal about government's vision of achieving the goals of the National Development Plan in your speech, and you also made reference to how there will be efforts of intervention in monitoring the NDP. Where does this now place the conversation around the country's energy generation capacity, which is a massive area of concern, especially considering this weekend alone, Eskom putting the country on stage for load shedding?
Remember, as DPME, we have, working together with department, facilitated planning across relevant areas, including energy. The next responsibility of DPME is to monitor if indeed those things are implemented. For instance, the Minister of Mineral and Energy presented that by the end of this financial year, no less than 7,000 energy would have been added. The biggest challenge we're confronted with, as you know, the President has spoken a lot about poor maintenance of power stations or old, what to call, machinery, and inefficiencies and even corruptions, all those things. The key thing in the energy, for instance, is the separation, as you all know, guys, of transmission, generation, and distribution. We are almost at the end of that. For instance, the issue of transmission is a matter of now getting a license, because once those three are separated, Eskom becomes a holding company, and we hope to gain efficiencies once those are done. We have said, for instance, we want to ensure that there's a trading platform where the energy generation does not only come from Eskom, so that you actually deal with the issue of cost and also find a way of managing the what to call. There's also an exploration on how best to deal with the debt of Eskom, which is actually biggest threat with regard to the future of Eskom. All I'm saying is that all those plans are in place between DPME and the Department of Mineral and Energy. Ours is to monitor at what point will we reach the issue where we can say the energy availability factor is about 70% or above.